So, good morning, folks. First thing is this is very informal. Please feel free to, raise your hand at any time if you have questions as we go along. So, I'm Sam Scheiner. I'm Program Officer in the Division of Environmental Biology in the Biological Sciences Directorate at NSF. And so, I'm here this morning to talk about the Directorate. But a couple of preliminary things I just want to mention. First of all, although, obviously, we fund biology research, there's actually biology research funded all across the foundation. So, for example, biological anthropology is in the Social Behavioral Economic Sciences Directorate. In the Geosciences Directorate is biological oceanography and paleontology. In math and physical sciences, there's a mathematical biology program. Some bioinformatics work is funded out of the Computer Science Directorate. There's bioengineering work in the Engineering Directorate. So, there may be many places for you to get funded, and also not just at NSF. So, of course, there's NIH, which is the big juggernaut, but there's, biology funded at USDA, EPA, NASA, NOAA, and so, as has been mentioned before, one of our jobs as program officers is to help for you to find the right home for your research. And, so we may, if you contact us, we may direct you to other parts of the foundation or possibly to other funding agencies, depending upon what your project is. Then the other sort of preliminary thing I'd like to say is, of course, all of you are doing great science, and we would love to fund everybody who is doing great science. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. I like to say there is absolutely nothing wrong with the peer review system that tripling my budget wouldn't solve. And so, even if you get turned down, I know everybody's research is the most important in the world, but even if you get turned down, it may not be because it's not perfectly good fundable research. We simply do not have enough money. So also keep that in mind. So. Here's just a brief outline. I'll give a little overview of the Biosciences Directorate, and we'll look at some of those programs and a bit about how to learn more and how to reach us. So, Directorate for Biological Sciences, enabling discoveries to understand life. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but fundamental research in the biological sciences. We're broken up into 4 divisions, 3 of them basically spanning various scales of organization, molecular and cellular biosciences, integrative organismal systems, and then environmental biology. And as you can see from the diagram, they overlap with each other. And then there's the Division of Biological Infrastructure, which funds things that either cross the divisions or things like our postdoc fellowship programs. And I'll talk about those briefly as we go. The priorities for the biological sciences in this fiscal year: building a resilient planet, advancing the bioeconomy, integration across the biological sciences, and then, of course, creating opportunities everywhere. A number of these are NSF priorities, and so some of them may involve special competitions or otherwise just priorities when we're making funding decisions within the core programs. So what about those about those programs. So let's look at our 4 divisions. So first, MCB, Molecular Cellular Biosciences, as the name implies. It's got 4 core programs. So we'll talk about, and you may have heard this terminology elsewhere, we talk about core programs at NSF. So those are the permanent, long-standing programs. And then we have special programs and tracks, and those may involve special solicitations, and so they're potentially a little more ephemeral. They may come and go. And the one important thing about the core programs is, in theory, if you have a great idea, and it is, you know, about fundamental science, somewhere at NSF, there should be a program which, you know, that it belongs to. The programs have fuzzy boundaries deliberately, so there are not holes between them. All our programs overlap, and often your proposals might be co-reviewed across different, more than one program. So the core programs in MCB, cellular dynamics and function, molecular biophysics, genetic mechanisms, and then systems and synthetic biology. And there are descriptions of all these. If you go to the web pages, you can find them. And the easiest way to get to this stuff is often like if you just go to the NSF homepage, up in the right-hand corner is a little search box. If you would just type in MCB, you'll get the link that'll get you to this division, and then you can drill down and look at programs and so forth. And they've got a number of special programs and tracks going on right now. I am not going to go through all of these. If I did, I could be spending 2 or 3 hours to go through all the details. Again, all of this information, if you have a specific question, please ask, but otherwise, go to the website and you can find the information for this. And again, you know, like, to get to stuff fast, like if you're interested in RECODE, you could type RECODE in that search box and it'll get you right to the web page for that program. So that's at the molecular cellular end of things. Then IOS, Integrative Organismal Systems, covers, as the name implies, that's at the organismal level. So they have 4 core programs: behavior, neural systems, developmental systems, and then physiological and structural systems, which actually has sort of a lot of things inside of it. And then on top of that, there is a program for plant genome research, which focuses on crops or crop allies or crop pests and so forth. And they also have a number of special competitions at the moment: EDGE, ORC, and PAXIB. So that's at the organismal level. Then next we get to Division of Environmental Biology. That's where I am. We like to say we have sort of 2 sides of the house: the ecology side, the evolution side. So in ecology, there's ecosystem sciences and population community ecology. And then on the evolution side is systematics, and then evolutionary processes, and that's my home program. I'm part of EP. And then we have a number of special competitions, and I'll just that are all listed here. And I'll just mention, if people are particularly interested in ecology and evolution of infectious diseases, I'm associated with that program and can also answer questions. But, you know, I can answer questions about most of this stuff. So one of the things that is a new requirement the last year or so is a safe and inclusive field plan. This was mentioned, I think, yesterday. There's a checkbox for all of the foundation, but there's a couple of parts of NSF, including the biological parts of biological sciences, for example, my division, that actually require a 2-page plan be included with the proposal. Again, I'm not going to go through all that, but so this is in lieu of the certification. And so be aware of that, in case you need to include it. Okay, so those are the three divisions that sort of cover that span of the biological sciences, from molecules up to ecosystems, biomes, and the globe. And then we've got division of biological infrastructure, and they include a couple of different parts. So human resources, this is like our postdoc fellowship program, various programs supporting, for example, research experiences for undergraduates, for teachers, and so forth. And again, you may not be able to read all those details, but so those are capacity, basically anything involving people. Then there's research resources, so that's things like funding, software development for programs that will be widely used. It also includes things like funding field station infrastructure, museum infrastructure, and so forth. And then we've got centers and facilities, and those include sort of large-scale kinds of activities, including NEON, the National Ecological Observatory Network, which covers the entire US. So one of the things that comes up all the time is biomedical research and what is and is not funded. And this gets to the fact that we have our sister agency across the river in Bethesda, NIH. Their budget is 10 times the size of the bio budget at NSF, and that budget basically focuses on one species, and we focus on the other 10 million. So, we draw a fairly, a fairly bright line between what should go to NIH and what is NSF. And so research on mechanisms of diseases in humans, right? So if these diseases of other organisms, that's fine. But diseases in humans, including etiology, diagnosis, or treatment, is normally not supported. Now, during the COVID epidemic, we were making exceptions, but and that also includes animal models that are focused on that. Now, that said, you could be doing research in a non-human species that has implications for human disease, but if you can frame that as asking a fundamental question about, let's say, mammalian biology that is not just human-centric, then it might be appropriate. And you need to talk to program officers in the program you might be submitting. And that's, as you've been hearing for the last 2 days, contact us about what your ideas are and so forth, and we can give you advice. But keep in mind that there is research on etiology diagnosis in other parts of the foundation. So, for example, there's a biomedical engineering program in the engineering directorate. There might be, for example, there might be some bioinformatics work that would be appropriate, that would be funded, that might advance diagnosis, that might get funded out of computer science. So again, contact us. The best way, again, I'll just repeat what's been said, the best way is to write up, a paragraph, a couple paragraphs, a page, email who you think is the most appropriate program officer there. And if it's not, we will find the right home, we'll forward your email and so forth, or have a discussion with you and say, well, this might be the appropriate program, but you would need to reframe the way you're doing the research. Sometimes it's not even a change in what you do, but in terms of the question the way you frame the question that you're asking. So when do you submit? So the core programs in the Biosciences Directorate have no deadline. You can submit at any time throughout the year. We're asked all the time, is there a better or worse time to submit? And the answer is no. Submit when your proposal is ready, not before. We have, all the core programs have multiple panels throughout the year. On average, between the time of submission and it will take about 5 to 6 months when you will find out the fate of your proposal. Either you'll get the reject email or you'll get the phone call saying you're getting funded, or we may say, well, we don't yet know, we're going to hold your proposal. And I can tell you sometimes that, especially like this year when the budget whole thing is really crazy, we're just contacting now somebody who had a proposal submitted last summer that went to a panel in September because we just didn't know if we were going to have enough money, and we're finally at the point where we're able to get that far down for the proposals from that panel. So it can take a while, but of course this person, we've been in contact with this person and we've told them that, we're holding the program, we're hoping to have money, and the person said, fine, just let it sit there. And so, yeah, so pretty much at any time. Now, that's for the core programs. That may not be true for the special competitions. Most solicitations have a deadline. And it will say in the solicitation when that is. Pay attention to the deadline. And I don't remember if this was said on Monday when they were talking about proposal preparation and submission. Never, never, never wait till the day of the deadline to submit. Just don't, because if something is messed up, you're out of luck. And we've had people they submit 5 minutes, at 4:55, and there's a problem, and then they email us frantically and say, "Can I have an extension?" And the answer is no. Always submit at least a couple of days before. Once you've submitted, download the proposal and make sure that what you think you submitted is actually what was submitted. So for example, you're required to have a data management plan and a mentoring plan. And we had a proposal that had 2 mentoring plans and no data management plan, right? Because they uploaded one file twice. Now in that case, it was to the core programs, there wasn't a deadline, they were just able to fix it. But if that had happened with a deadline, you would have been out of luck. You couldn't have fixed it. So, always check and do that a couple days before. So if you have to fix it, you have plenty of time. Okay, so I've talked about the core programs and what the various divisions support, but then there's also a lot of cross-division and cross-directorate programs. One of the great things about NSF is because NSF funds all of STEM, we like to say we're the right agency for interdisciplinary research because it all exists right in one building. And it's easy for us to collaborate across programs, across the foundation, and we do that. There's a couple of things. So again, I'm not going to go through a whole, we have a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to talk about a few relatively new ones. There's a DCL is, we're acronym city, right? DCL stands for Dear Colleague Letter. So this is not solicitation, but an encouragement for proposals to come to the core programs in what we call LIFE, Leveraging Innovations from Evolution. So using comparative approaches and convergent evolution. And those can go at any time to any of the core programs in DB, MCB, iOS, and DBI. So that's one of the relatively new programs we have. Then we have integrative research in biology. There is a tendency for people to do fairly narrow disciplinary types of work. And we like to encourage broader approaches to problems and so forth. Some of the most interesting research is the stuff that happens at the intersection between disciplines. And so we have a couple of different kinds of programs. One is in bio, and that's those are for proposals that are going to get submitted to core programs, but be co-reviewed across multiple programs. So they're of a size that's going to be sort of typical, maybe a little bit larger than the stuff that comes to the core. And then we have a much larger program, Biology Integration Institutes, which I've also been involved in, so I can give you more details if you're interested. And those are for very large integrative projects. So these are up to $15 million over 6 years, and it can be from a single institution, but the vast majority of the things that have been funded have multiple are projects that are based on teams that have been assembled across multiple institutions. I think the max is like 12, but 4 or 5 is not untypical. And those are really to try to do this integrative research. And the deadline, actually it says usually end of January. It's the middle of this coming February is the next deadline. And at the moment, it's every other year. So, so this is just sort of a diagram about, possibilities for integrative projects. And, the larger scope things can then go to either BII or the IntBio track. But even then, even for the core programs, we also do a lot of interdisciplinary work. So my program, we just had a panel last week, and of 43 proposals, then 25 of them were co-reviewed with at least one other program. So now, of course, we're evolutionary biology. Evolution tends to be more interdisciplinary, but that's, it's not untypical for all of the biological sciences to have lots of co-review. And I should say, this is asked all the time, co-review is not double jeopardy. In fact, we've run the numbers for years. Proposals that are co-reviewed have actually a higher chance of getting funded. Not that much, but marginally larger, but it is a larger chance of getting funded. And the reason is you're tapping into potentially 2 pots of money rather than just one. So don't be afraid that your proposal might get co-reviewed. A couple of other things. Again, that are relatively new, biodiversity on a changing planet. So that's a special solicitation with a deadline. The next one is in September. And this is also an example of a program which is international in scope. So it actually includes co-funding with researchers in China, Brazil, and/or South Africa. So it comes in as an international collaboration. EDGE, enabling discovery through genomic tools. Again, if you have a focus on genomics. Then again, something relatively new, accelerating innovations in biomanufacturing. So this is part of that bioeconomy. And again, you can look at, the deadline is TBD, but you can go to the website and find information on this if that's where your interests lie. So finally, just building capacity among people. So there's a large number of kinds of programs that we have that stretch throughout individuals' research career, from research experience for, well, K-12 teachers, but also there are summer internships for high school students, through undergraduate, post-baccalaureate, graduate student, postdocs, new faculty, career, so you'll hear about career right after this morning. And then there's even for mid-career. Now, some of this is outside the biological sciences. So, for example, the graduate research fellowships, that's something that's run out of the Division of Graduate Education in the Education Directorate. But yeah, essentially we have things that span that entire extent, and you can ask, again, now some of these are supplements if you have awards. So, for example, research experiences for undergraduates is done as a supplement to existing awardees. Something that's relatively new, BioLeaps, leading cultural change through professional societies. So this is trying to use professional societies as a leverage point to really change culture, broaden participation across the sciences. And then BRC Bio, this is also a very new proposal. I noticed I didn't update the slide, so it still has last year's deadline in there. But there's one coming up. Well, we're in the proposal window right now. This is for faculty who are at non-R1 schools who normally don't have, like if you're at an R1 school, you may be getting $500,000 or $1 million in startup money. This is not for you folks, right? This is for people at non-R1 schools, R2s, comprehensive universities, primarily undergraduate institutions that don't have access. And you have to be in a tenure track position in your first few years, in their first 3 years, but basically you can come to us and we will help create capacity at these kinds of institutions. I will say we've run one round, last year's round, and we were very pleased with the results, and because the range of institutions that we ended up supporting people was much broader than, at many institutions that we had never funded before. So that's the sort of thing we'd like to see. And then at the other end, we have this mid-career advancement. These are for people who are at the associate professor rank or equivalent and sort of stuck there because they've had other, things that have sort of stalled their career. And there's also, we have a little pilot going right now, which is also extends eligibility to full professors, again, only at primarily undergraduate institutions. So it's a chance to reinvigorate your career, learn new things. In my program, the most common proposal we see are people who want to learn the latest genomics techniques, right? So if they were like me, right, I was trained as a quantitative geneticist, not in genomics at all, but now everybody's doing genomics. I need to learn how to do genomics, get it going in my lab, and so I partner with somebody for that. So if you're in that sort of a situation, this is something to think about. So just a few things how to reach us. We have, you can sign up for emails to get news. You can put in keywords and get alerts whenever there are keywords. We have a quarterly newsletter that comes out. Now, all of the divisions and then bio as a whole we have blogs. I strongly urge you to sign up for these. I've signed up for the blog for my division because, I can see what's coming out. I mean, we won't spam you. Maybe once a week, you'll get a notification about once a week about the new things that are coming up, new solicitations, dear colleague letters. We have these things called virtual office hours. So all of the divisions once a month do virtual office hours in which, like this last month, we did one on career proposals because the career deadline is coming up at the end of July. But so they can be maybe on specific solicitations or things more broadly. They're all recorded, so you can go to our website and like if you're interested in the career, you can pull up the virtual office hours from this past month and look at. So the whole archive is there. And so this is very, very useful. And, we do a presentation. It's sort of like this, right? But strictly virtual. We'll do a little presentation and then have an open Q&A. So I encourage you to pay attention. And so if you subscribe to the blog will include announcements of upcoming virtual office hours. And then when the virtual office hours is over, we'll send out a post that will say, here's the link to find the archive if you want to look at it. So just a few core take-home messages. No deadlines to our core programs. We switched about 4 years ago now. We've been quite pleased. So you submit when you are ready. And I will say the biggest change, two things. One, the number of submissions went way down. This is true across the foundation. It turns out that most people are driven by deadlines. If you don't have a deadline, you don't get stuff in. But what it's really done is eliminate the bottom tail of the distribution. The best proposals are still the best proposals, but we used to get these really crappy proposals. That were sort of two types. One was people who were rushing something to get it in because there was the deadline and it just wasn't ready. It would come in not fully thought out, typos, still have embedded comments between the authors, which were also always interesting to read. All that sort of stuff. Or people, frankly, who are being pushed by their administrators, right? There's an upcoming deadline and their administrators push them to submit and they're not really interested, and so they throw something crappy. Those have pretty much disappeared, the bottom 20% of the distribution, which is good because it means that what we're seeing is of much better quality. Unfortunately, of course, we still don't have enough money. There's lots of different funding mechanisms for interdisciplinary research, for people across careers, for broadening participation. And as always, contact the relevant program officer to discuss your ideas. We're always happy to respond to you. As was said the other day, if you're contacting a particular program, if you go in the biological sciences, all of the core programs have multiple program officers associated with them. And so don't send separate emails to each person. Just don't do that. Send one email to the group, and that's fine, and then we will decide among ourselves who's going to respond. But that way, you're more likely to get at least one person who's available, either is not traveling or not busy with other panels, whatever, and can respond. And that also allows us to coordinate our response. And that's also true if you're not sure what program, and it may be one of two different programs. You can just send to one, and we can sort it out. But it's also perfectly acceptable to send an email to more than one program. But again, just send one email. don't send multiple emails, because what happens is, like, I'll get an email and I say, oh, well, they should be talking to this program in iOS. And I forward the email and they say, oh, yeah, they've already sent us an email. So, just send one email to sort of everybody who you think might be relevant. And that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable, because if somebody else is going to handle it, I just hit delete and then I could ignore it. And then finally, NSF is run by the community, right? The core of our mission is peer review, and you are the peers. So we always need reviewers, and those are of two types. So what we call ad hoc reviewers, which means we'll send you an email and say, I have a proposal that's right in your area of expertise. Can you provide me a review? And then we have panels, and we may ask you to be on a panel. The best way at the moment to let us know that you're interested in being a reviewer is to send an email, again, to the program that's most closely aligned with your expertise, with your CV, and because that lets us know what you're doing. I will say, at some time in the next 6 months, NSF will be rolling out a volunteer to review part of the system, so that you'll actually be able to go in, create a profile for yourself, including your expertise, and that should really expand the range of reviewers. If you have postdocs, encourage them to become reviewers. They are eligible, and I will say postdocs are usually the best reviewers, because one, they're flattered when we ask them, and they've got lots of time, and they'll write very long, detailed reviews, when senior people may, they'll dash off something. But so you can volunteer, but then also, as was mentioned yesterday, half of the program officers at NSF are what we call rotators. Right, so they come from academia, or actually sometimes from industry, typically from academia, for 1 to 3 years, typically 2 years, to serve as a program officer. And so we always have this sort of rolling cohort of rotators. I started as a rotator many years ago and then ended up staying permanently. But if you're interested in that, typically, at least for us, we won't ask you until you're post-tenure, because we don't want to mess up, right? You're getting tenure. But people post-tenure are fair game. Typically, we look for people who've had at least some review experience, some panel experience. But it is something, feel free to ask us about it. And so that's what I've got. I still have about 20 minutes or so left. So questions, is there anything?
Yeah, we do. Well, if you do have a question, please come use the microphone so that folks online can hear. But we do have one from online, and this is related to programs with no deadlines. Mm-hmm. How do you run the review? Is it when you get a certain number of proposals, or do you have set times throughout the year for the review panels?
So that's a great question. Actually, it turns out, at least in our division, we get a pretty regular stream throughout the year. So in a sense, it is when we get a certain number, but we know when that's going to happen, right? Because we know approximately how many per week we're going to get. So it's sort of a little bit of both. A lot of it is driven by making sure that the panels are spread out throughout the year, and also, of course, holidays, beginning of semesters, and so forth. There are a lot of other factors that sort of figure in exactly the timing. Question here, yes.
Hi, I have a question about the safe and inclusive plan.
Yeah.
In the new PAPG, it says required, right? But
Yeah.
I attended the DEB career virtual office hours just a while ago. And then they said that document is not required for career programs. Is that?
That's correct. So So that safe and inclusive supplemental document only pertains to the solicitations that specify it. Because career is across the entire foundation and not just for our division, the career solicitation doesn't include it. And so, yes, you should not include a safe plan. And if you put one in, we'll tell you to take it out.
Okay, so it's like my work involves field work, so like I just want to clarify.
Yes, yeah, and it is confusing as to when it's included and when it's not, and you won't get penalized if you include it. Like I say, career has a deadline. If you would include the safe plan, we would just tell you take it out. We're not going to return without review for something like that. Other questions about? Yes.
Hi, I was hoping you could speak a little bit about the meaning of interdisciplinary. Like, should we think of that as across division? Can we think of that as across directorate? Is there kind of any guidance on that?
It can be all of those things. It can also be within divisions, right? It's, what disciplines are squishy things, right? And so, I mean, basically the way to think about this is, so what's the question you want to ask? Don't worry about labels, right? What's the question you want to answer, and what's the team that you have to put together with what range of expertise to answer that question? And if you're not sure, if it fits within particular guidelines, for example, for Int Bio, whatever, again, let us know, and we'll let you know if it does or does not. Even if it doesn't, as I said, we do a lot of co-review, and we're still interested in the project that you'd like to send to us. So, okay. So anything about the biological sciences, or as I say, stuff going across the foundation, I can answer a lot of questions. Anything? Yes, another question.
Hi, so I had a question about, you had a slide about biomedical research versus biological research. So I'm just wondering if you had a research proposal that was proposing to develop some new, say, engineering computational approaches to answer a biological question, but the motivation for that proposal is related to the biomedical health-related aspects, like improving the diagnosis, prognosis, et cetera, of certain diseases.
Right.
Where do you draw the line between, okay, let's send this to the NSF versus NIH?
Well, so first of all, it depends where you're sending that, right? So something like that, which might be going to engineering or computer science, that's fine. You can motivate it by the medical outcomes. That's fine. For the biological sciences, medical outcomes are okay as sort of part of broader impacts, right? The medical implications, but generally what we're looking for are things which have implications beyond just, solving this particular disease, something that's more broadly. So, for example, computational advances could be generalizable. I don't know what you're thinking of, but I can imagine there are lots of bioinformatics kinds of things looking at for genes, which yes, you might be as a case study be using cancer genes to test out the software, but it also has implications for the gene discovery for any kind of trait, and so I think the important thing is to talk to a program officer where you're going to submit, and they can help you in the framing in terms of what would fit within their program.
Okay, so it sounds like if it's more geared towards the discovery or gaining insight into the fundamental biology of something, then that would be more applicable for this.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, can you,
I think, yeah. There you go.
5-2, sorry. Can you differentiate between the symbiosis, infection,
Yeah, SII.
and iOS versus EEID and
Okay. There's a program in the Integrative Organismal Systems Division called SII, which is Symbiosis, Infection, and Immunity. And then the other program that was mentioned is Ecology and Evolution of Infectious Diseases. The best way to think of EID is for larger integrative projects. So it's one of the few programs that actually has a minimal budget. So it has to be at least $1.5 million, up to $3 million. If it's smaller than that, then we say go to the core programs with whatever you're doing. But the basic distinction between EID and SII is that EID is about ultimately predictive understanding of pathogen transmission dynamics, right? So COVID, right? And how COVID is moving around, while SII is all about what's happening to when the pathogen is inside the host and how they're affecting each other. Now, obviously that also affects how transmission occurs. So a project that would fit within SII could be part of a larger EID project, but by itself would not be sufficient. But if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I also have my business cards. So afterwards, if you don't have time now or think of something later, I'm happy to give you a card and you can contact me about any of this. Other questions? Yeah.
Jing Xu from Liberty University. Thank you, Dr. Scheiner, for the informative presentation. On one of your slides, you suggest us to contact the program officer if I have questions and attach a one-page summary of our work. And on your slide, you have some tips for that one-page summary. Would you please offer some suggestions?
We don't want something really long because, we're all busy. But you want to boil it down to what are the key questions you're thinking of trying to ask, and what are the approaches you're going to use? Because those are the sort of key pieces of information in terms of figuring out what the right home for that potential project is, and then any sort of unusual characteristics. For example, do you have international collaborators? As was mentioned, there's a number of programs that have special international, certain countries that we have international collaboration, co-funding possibilities with. For example, so anything that's of interest, or are you coming from a primarily undergraduate institution? Again, we have certain kinds of solicitations you can apply to if you're at a PUI, for example. So anything like that, that's the kind of information that should go into that one-page summary, and then so we figure out, okay, what's the right home for this? And then usually we'll come back to you and say, it depends on what your question is. But, we may say, okay, let's set up a time to have a discussion. And then, we figure out, what works for everybody's schedule. Is that, okay. Other questions? We still have about 10 minutes here. About anything, life, the universe. The answer is 42. Yes.
I'm interested in the whole bioeconomy initiative that's beyond NSF, and you see it in the Casa Bio federal government initiative. And I know you said that the accelerating innovations in biomanufacturing is going to be run again. Yeah. So I'm excited to see that. But are there any other tips or insights you can give us to how bio is taking part in the Casa Bio initiative and what we should look out for?
So the answer is no, because this is still something sort of in progress, and complicated by the fact that our budgets are very uncertain, so we don't necessarily know what we're going to be able to do. I mean, we're now 2/3 of the way through the federal fiscal year, and we still do not have our budgets for our core programs. I mean, I've been at NSF almost 26 years. It's never been this crazy. All we do know is we're getting a cut, right? So the budget was cut by Congress, and so that just adds a complication. And so this is why you should subscribe to those blogs and newsletters, because as stuff comes out, it will get posted there. That's really, and also, we're not, there are limitations about what we can say until something is fully public, because for fairness sake, right, they need to get announced widely. So yeah, just sort of keep your eye out and subscribe to the blogs. Other questions? Ain't nothing online? Okay. Well, then, thank you very much for your attention. Very much appreciate it. And, I'll be around for the rest of the morning. So don't hesitate to either come up to me, or, as I say, you can find my contact information online. And feel free to contact me about anything. As I say, if I'm not the right person to answer the question, I will direct it to the right person. Thank you.